Welcome to My Psychedelic Roots, a podcast of conversations with people from a broad swath of lived experience to explore their psychedelic beginnings or roots, what led them to start using psychedelics, what those early experiences were like, and how those roots have impacted their life's unfolding. My name is Amy Bartlett, and it is my hope that these stories, generously shared by my guests, offer perspective and insight into the lived reality of psychedelic experiencing. Please feel welcome to subscribe and follow the show to get the latest conversations in your podcast feed. And you are always invited to share this episode with others if you feel inspired. And so, as always, whoever, wherever, or whenever you are, welcome. I'm glad you're here. In today's episode, I sit down with Lucia Rios Maia da Silva, a friend and queer Brazilian psychotherapist whose life and research are guided by a deep connection to nature and plant medicines. In our conversation together, we explore their childhood raised by two pastors and hear about the disconnection that they experienced as they were forced to try to correct their queerness, as well as talking about the new communities and spiritualities they built as they learned to live in their truth. After fully coming out in Brazil, Lucia moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada in 2019, seeking a safer social and political context, where we eventually move into hearing about their first psychedelic experience with psilocybin mushrooms. Lucia is now based in Ottawa, pursuing a PhD in experimental psychology at the University of Ottawa. But in her conversation, Lucia also shares about their strong ethical commitment to Indigenous ontologies that they built in community with Indigenous peoples in Winnipeg, an experience which has informed their evolving spirituality and relationship with sacred plant medicines today. I learned a lot about them in our conversation, and I'm glad to know Lucia as someone deeply passionate about connection and community, someone who seems so comfortable navigating the messiness of human relating, and someone seeking to broaden their community as they seek deeper communion with plant teachers and allies. And so, let's hear more about Lucia's psychedelic roots. Lovely. Lucia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so pleased that we get to chat together. So thank you for making the time and being willing to share your story. As we begin our conversation together, what do you think it's important that people know about you and your life today before we move into the conversation about your psychedelic roots?
Yeah, introducing myself, my name is Lucia. I'm a queer Brazilian psychotherapist who has lived in Canada. I moved here in 2019, but I only started calling Canada home in 2022. So, and that's part of my real first psychedelic experience. So that's why this immigration process, reconnecting with the land, psychedelics played a really important role in that. But right now I'm based in Ottawa. I moved here a year ago. Ottawa is the unceded and unsurrendered territory of Anishinaabe, Algonquin people. It's also important to do this land acknowledgement because reconnecting with the land is an important part for me here in Canada.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that and, getting to know you a little bit. I'm wondering if we were to trace a thread from your childhood to your first psychedelic experience, where might that thread begin for you?
So it's interesting when you put that way, because I think from my childhood I never heard about psychedelics or even plants of power, sacred plants, master plants. I never heard about it when I was growing up, because I was raised by two very conservative Baptist church pastors. My parents said they are pastors. So I was immersed in this kind of Christianity, this Christian context. Drugs was not at all, any kind of drugs were not at all accepted.
So you grew up in a very Christian household. Your parents were both pastors. How did you experience the world in that kind of context? Was the world safe? Was the world miraculous? Was the world scary? What were some of the ways that you moved through the world as a child?
Yeah, so considering my queer identity, I knew from the get-go that something was off and that it would not be like welcome by my family, right? Once I was like ready to disclose. But the thing is, growing up in Brazil until my like early teens, I was pretty much like inside that like gospel movement content. It's funny when I share that with people, they said, no way. When I show like old pictures of myself, it's like, we cannot recognize you, you know? So a lot of my like gender identity issues and my like also my like sexual orientation, I only start to explore later on when I was in my maybe 16,
Mhm,
17 years old.
mhm.
And even my gender identity, I think I only like got to like it's still fluid, but I think I only got comfortable with it once I moved here. Like more
Mm,
comfortable with it. So yeah, like during my teenagerhood, when I like came to my mom, I remember the day I was like 15 years old. She was cooking. I came to her and said, mom, you know what because people can tell, people can feel you're unconscious, like people can read you. So there were a lot of like rumors in the church about me already, like mainly because I had like a friend in the church. My mom, like, I came to her and say, like these rumors that people are talking about me, I think that's truth because I really like this person. Right? Like, really like her. It's not like a friend. I'm attracted to her. My mom, she was not, I think she was not expecting me to come like so like straight up in that way, as a teen. And like she didn't even look at me. She kept like cooking, moving like her stuff there on the oven. She was like, yeah, she didn't say much. But there was consequences for disclosing that. And when I shared that, I had like it's not that nothing had happened yet because there was a lot of things happening inside me, right? A lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings, a lot of different sensations. But I like what I mean is I hadn't done anything. I hadn't like kissed a woman yet. And so I was very naive to disclose without even like trying before. That's how I see it today. Yeah. So I was sent to like conversion therapy.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah. I had like people who are like they consider themselves psychologists, but they consider themselves like Christian psychologists, right? So there was a lot of like repression, a lot of punishment. Yet I started dating that person, but we had a lot of like back and forth. We had a lot of breakups because it was hard to like sustain a relationship in this kind of environment.
of
When
course.
you are still trying to understand yourself, when you're still like financially dependent on like your family. So it's both of us because we were both teens. And I don't think I were at a moment in my life that I could like propose her anything, right? Like we were very young. So yeah, so what happened? I dated this girl for like 4 years, like with many like breakups. After that, I got married to a guy. I was married for like 3 years. We were together for by almost 6 years, but like I was married with him for 3 years until we got to a point. Like in that time, I was already questioning. Even though I moved to like a more progressive, affirmative church, I was already questioning Christianity in my life. I
Mm,
was opening to different spiritualities. I was also like inserted in a political left wing movement in Brazil as a psychologist, as like a mental health professional supporting just like psychiatric reform in Brazil.
I'm sorry that you didn't feel supported or accepted by your family or by the church that you were in. What impact did your gender identity and sexuality questioning have on your spirituality when you were younger? And how did that change and evolve for you?
I think I was pretty sure about like what I was feeling. My desire is like what has been moving me until nowadays.
Mhm.
Like I'm open to the encounter. And that's interesting because that's like pretty much the philosophy of my life. Of course, I need to like realign a bunch of stuff, right? Like to deconstruct all the authoritarianism that comes with Christianity. It changed because I could tell how I'm happy and like the peace, the fulfillment that comes with the choices that I made and the experience that I had, right? Like you can tell when you have like a very positive and good encounter. Not that I want to put things in this way, good and bad, but like you can tell when an encounter like it's able to like fill your cup in a way that you have like this potency of life like in you. So
Yes.
so that's what I could tell. Like I could compare different relationships that I had, right? Like with men, with women. I could compare like even like different spiritual settings, what I was feeling, and like, of course, it was really like scary to open up to different spiritual connections, right? Because it's been like demonized. That's the way I learned. That's the way like I was taught to see and to avoid many of these connections, right?
Yeah.
So, but yet have good friends around us, friends who are also like not so defensive, friends who are like not like ready to judge, but friends who are like able to listen, able to come along. These friendships that I made, like not only out of church, like I feel like inside church, but like mostly out of church. And
Yeah.
yeah, they are able to open like the pressure valve and help me like decompress
Yes.
this and help me to like redirect in life. So
Hmm. I know that nature is a big part of your relationship nowadays. What role did nature play for you as a kid and when you were growing up? As you're talking about support and community, I'm curious if nature played a role in supporting you or feeling connected, or maybe not, and you discovered her later. I don't know.
no, that's a very good question because like it did play a part in my childhood because I used to go camping, not that much, but I used to go camping with my family. We used to go to places that are like in terms of like infrastructure, we barely have like paved roads, and it was not on purpose. It was like the way Brazil it is, you know. Like, so we didn't have electricity, and we used to go to these places because they were cheaper, you know, for vacation. It's not because we want to do like to explore the wild or something, you know. Like it was what was accessible to my family. It's interesting how you put it. If it gave me a sense of security, I'm not sure. I can tell like from like last years how I reconnect with forest, but maybe you're right. Maybe it's always been there and like just moved away, like trying to rationalize a lot of my experience. And now that I'm more focused on my body and my sensations, I'm realizing how forest is part of like this experience, part of this healing too. But what happened to me is here in Canada, when I got here, I was trying to escape. Like Brazil was in a very like delicate political movement when like a more conservative force were emerging, and we had like a very far right president elected in 2019. So that's when I decided to move to Canada, right? More for protection. And I moved here with my wife. So I was already a person completely like out in Brazil, right? So like we lived together for a few years there. So it was not a surprise for my community, it was not a surprise for my family. They were yet digesting a lot of stuff, but I'm like I was following my pace, I was following my, you know, my path. And when we moved here and in 2021, we got divorced. And that was like the most incredibly painful moment in my life. When I say that, it's not because it's not only because the loss of someone I loved, but also because the context that I was, right? The web of support, the lack of web of support. So I had to go through that painful like moment, and I didn't have my great friends around, my family, right? Even like the way I was practicing my spirituality, I didn't have reference. And in Brazil, like I like to say, when you are grieving or when you're like in a very, very hard suffering moment, the way that I like to cope, you go and you spend a day on the beach, you know, you go into like a samba circle because the energy of circle is like refreshing, you know, it's grounding too. Or you go and you try like a different food, right? Like the part of the cuisine. Brazilian cuisine is amazing. And so like with feijoada, different. croquettes. So these are like the way that I used to comfort myself if I'm going for a rough patch, right? But look at that. I'm here in Canada and some things are not accessible at all because I lived in Winnipeg before. So Samba Circle, here in Ottawa, we still can find like one, like twice in the year, but like not accessible at all in Winnipeg. The beach, not accessible at all, right? Like, so the food you can try to find one or another there here, but it's still like rare to find it. So that's why I'm saying I was struggling hard. Even the way that I knew how to like cope, they were not available, right? So
Hmm. And nature wasn't a comfort or wasn't accessible in that way.
to be honest, during that time was the time that I will like I put myself out to do, like for some hiking during the winter. That was the when I start to enjoy it. But the thing is, in terms of my spiritual path, I start to connect with some indigenous group in Manitoba during the winter, like minus 30-ish, minus 40, because winter in Winnipeg is really harsh. And I was going to sweat lodge with them, like different powwows, different events. And getting close to this indigenous community, it kind of like start to help me to reconnect with the land and to shift like to a this system of knowledge that they have, different ontological knowledge. So that's when I realized that I was already open to, let's say, the philosophy of diversity. I was already open to the potency of the encounters. But yet, I was not without hierarchy in my encounters. I was still very focused on human perspective, human centered lenses, human centered framework of healing. But for indigenous folks, the land is part of their identity, right? Getting closer to them reconnected me with nature too.
Mm.
And with reconnecting me to nature, it opened this gate for the like sacred plants, the plant medicine. And that's when I think it happened like my first experience, real experience with psychedelic.
As you're developing your relationship with nature, you had some encounters with psychedelics and they came into your consciousness while you were still in Brazil. What
Hmm
was that
hmm
like and how did they come into your consciousness?
Yeah. So part of people that I was supporting, like clients, and also like not, I didn't have like many friends in Brazil who were like ayahuasqueros, but I heard about like one another person, like a colleague, or how it was like mind shift, a really important like key for them in their life, in their subjectivity, how they were able to open to others things, like and to realize about their own like trauma process and to be more accountable for their choices and to be more accepting to who they are, right? So listening to those folks, I realized, yeah, this person is like trying, like they are still struggling with some things, but they got it. They are handling it well, like it's part of life. You're gonna have some like hard moments and you're gonna need to learn and grow, and growing is painful, right? They know what they are doing. They know where they are going.
So you had some clients that you encountered. You had people in your circles who were ayahuasqueros or who had tried
hmm
ayahuasca. Was
hmm
there a particular moment or conversation or experience that made you start to think about whether that was something that you wanted to experience or that might be something for you specifically?
It's funny, like, because I was curious since I started hearing about it. And it's interesting how it hit people different because some of my friends, they are, no, that's not for me. Like, they are right away, like, declining it. No. Yeah, I struggle with getting sick. I struggle with, like, throwing up, and I don't want to put myself through it, even though you cannot say, right, if that's exactly what's going to happen to you.
Mhm.
Experience is the way we're going to experience this relationship with the plant is different. But yeah, they know there's this probability, so they don't want to take the risk. And that was never a concern to me. Like, sometimes I think like what could happen physically, but I'm so more like attracted to the connection and the discussions that probably I'm gonna have with the plant. I say that I'm gonna have because that's a goal, right? Like that's a calling. I know that I'm still going back to Brazil one day, and I want to happen in Brazil, but I haven't yet. You know. haven't had this experience with ayahuasca yet.
And so you were curious about it. You had friends or clients who were talking about it, but then you moved to Canada. The geographical move from Brazil to Canada also precipitated your move towards psychedelics. How did you come to try your first psychedelic experience in Canada?
Yeah. So now that you're like asking me about this like immigration process, it made me think about something that I want to share.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
yeah, I have a friend in Brazil that he's like a medium. We were talking about ayahuasca, right? And she was also one very like defensive and careful about it, saying like, Lucia, I'm already like too sensitive to stuff, and I don't want to try it because I'm afraid I might like lose my mind.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of people that when I talk with them, they have this kind of like fear. It's valid. There is a very small probability that it can happen, but like I'm not even concerned about it. Why? Like you can ask, like, so why you never tried? I think I never tried why I was there because I was not feeling safe yet with who I am. So that's why I mentioned like my status in Canada was never as a refugee, but I came running away from a political context and situation in Brazil. So I was not feeling safe. And can you imagine if you were like more vulnerable, like when you're doing this experience with the ayahuasca, with secret plants, you get more vulnerable, but you are already not feeling safe enough to be vulnerable in where you are. So when I moved here, I remember like that was the first time that I acknowledged to myself that I would like to have like a queer kid. And I'm not saying this because before I had like self-hatred or like a prejudice to the community. It was more like because I was afraid that what could happen to my kid, you know? So I was never ready to say, "Oh, I want to have like a queer kid," like to wish that. And but here I was able to, I think in this society, I'm not saying that it's perfect, but here I feel comfortable to raise a queer kid. I feel safe. So that's when I moved to the next step. But I was like, okay, so let me allow myself to explore different alternate states of consciousness. So the curiosity it's always been there. The calling, it's always been there. But like the feeling of like safeness was not. So that's part of like how Canada helped me to build that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I'm interested that part of knowing that you felt more safe here is because it felt safe to raise a queer kid. I'm curious about that in relationship to perhaps your own inner child
Yeah,
and feeling safe with her and as her and in her.
I agree totally. Because I felt that I could be like for my kid and for myself what I didn't have back there. Right. So yeah.
Hmm. And so, as you're building this sense of safety, as you're feeling more connected with yourself, how did you move from this awareness of more safety and your first psychedelic experience?
So yeah. So after connecting with the indigenous community in Manitoba, I was like seeking this sense of belonging. It's like after the divorce, after all the crisis that I have with lack of support, going through this hard time, I was okay. I'm not sure if I like should stay here anymore. That
Hmm.
was one of the questions I had in mind. I
Yeah.
was wondering, should I stay? Should I go? Where should I go? Is it back to Brazil? Brazil is still home. Yeah, it's still home, but home doesn't know pretty well how to like embrace me, even though I miss it a lot. So like so many questions to answer. So getting closer to the indigenous ontology, it helped me to shift my perspective. I always believed that we are all in this like single plan of immanence, right? But I also always believe that we are like multiplicity. It's not about like one absolute sense of oneness. I don't know if it makes sense. It was never that for me. It was never about like seeking my truth, was never about like unpeeling different layers of myself to like finally understand or be aware about who I am. Was never about it. Was always about being open to the multiplicity, the diversity of the encounters, to respect that, to honor that, in a non-hierarchical mode. And that's what indigenous ontologists came to to fill in about all these encounters. They came to help me understand the importance of all equality in the way that we connect with human, non-human, non-living
Mhm.
beings, right? The force of becoming, that is my primacy, right? It's not the force of being, but the force of becoming, being open to the change, being
Mhm.
open to the encounters, to the diversity, not being afraid. Because when we get afraid, that's when we create harm to others, to ourselves too. Yeah, so that's when I realized that I was very human centered and I need to start changing that. So I reconnect with nature in another perspective. That's when I tried mushrooms for the first time. I had almost more than 3.5 grams. I was
Were
camping.
were
I
you
was
with
camping.
another yeah, were you with another person? Were you alone?
Yeah, yeah. I was with friends. Only one person had with me. It was interesting to feel how I could hear everything around me. I could feel so much different things. I caught myself crying out of the blue, and then I realized I was crying because was having this memory about these things, and it was so interesting about all the lessons that I grabbed from it, all the connections, all the talk that I had, and how I put myself in the same level of nature, animals. Yeah, and that's for me, it was a big shift in my life, big
Mm.
in my perspective. Yeah.
So, this first experience, you were camping with friends, you took the medicine with another person, but there were other people who were sober as well?
Yeah. There was one more person who was sober.
Great.
And that person was a good reference because we completely lost the track of time. And that person came to check on us once in a while. And that person was a very patient person.
Mhm.
But the person they got to a moment that they were they were done. They were so,
Mm.
are you guys gonna come back? Are you guys gonna join me for dinner? That's when we realized, oh my god, if this person who is very patient is mad at us, it sounds like we have been here for a long, long time. Thinking.
Mm. So, it was your very first experience with a non-ordinary state of consciousness. What did the come up feel like for you?
It was fun. It
Hmm.
was fun. Yeah, I realized that I had those belly laughs, for a long time. That's when I realized oh my god, I don't even remember when was the last time I had this good belly laugh.
Mm.
Yeah, and I could see so many different colors in people. I could see color in people. I look at people and I could see their colors
Mhm.
vibrating within and out. Of course, before trying it, I was a bit, well, I hope we have medical assistant if it's needed. You have this kind of concern, but I was not afraid. I was not afraid to be vulnerable.
Did you have any intentions going into that experience? Or was it what you expected?
It was way more than I expected because honestly, now I have the idea that whenever I'm gonna try it, I usually do once a year or maximum twice a year, this kind of experience. But I have all this preparation, the songs that I like. I put a playlist. Usually I do it with Frank. We create a playlist together. We create the food that we want to have available for us for whenever it's needed. And I do my own intentions as you're mentioning. But before, no, I had no orientation and I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. Now I ask for things that I want to see. And it's funny because sometimes we don't get what you ask for, but sometimes you ask and you expect things to show up in a sense, in a way,
Mhm.
but they do show up, but they do show up in a different way that you expect. That's why you think that you're gonna see an end. And then things can show up in a very material way. And you go, wow, that's what I was asking for to see, right?
Mhm.
This kind of sign. So yeah.
Mhm.
Now I have been building the relationship with these plants. I do go to the encounter different way in that I was in the first, right?
Why did your first experience happen then? Or again, it could have just been random, but I'm curious why then and not so many times before.
I think because I was in a moment that I was feeling more grounded,
Hmm.
you know, with
Hmm.
myself. That's a good question, Amy. I don't know why I decided to do that time. Like, I don't know.
There doesn't
But
have
I
to be
think,
an answer.
yeah, I think I felt I was ready to,
Hmm.
I was not like really depending on other people reaction or I was feeling that I was able to go for it.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Mm.
Was there a particular or specific insight or vision or feeling from that first experience that has stayed with you or that you continue to think about or integrate or has showed up for you in subsequent journeys?
I think one thing that showed up, but it's very unique of like each experience has its traits. So I think when I was like, you were able to see what the other person is seeing too. And that's amazing. That's something that I have been sharing like in different experience that I had later with other friends, with other people. It's like you're able to feel what the other person is going through and even to see what they are seeing. I don't know if there is the intent to share, but I think there is because they like we decide to do the experience together. So and sometimes I remember once I was doing it with my partner and like she was looking at the trees and the trees was getting some like indigenous shapes, right? And she was completely like light on the ground and she was like, "Are you seeing?" And I was sitting like beside her. She was like, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Because like, can you see all this indigenous face on like on the trees and all this like?" And I was, "Yeah, I can." But you know what? I think that was part of her journey, not mine, but was shared. She wanted me to see it too. So that's something that has been happening a lot. Like, of course, the content changing depending on who I'm with. But I really appreciate that.
Is that something that happened in that first experience? Or that's something that's happened in subsequent experiences?
No, it has happened like in all my experience.
All of them.
Yeah.
What was that shared experience that first time for you?
For the first time was, yeah, I think was about the colors. Like when I touched the person who was like my friend who was beside me, and she also touched me, like I could see her colors and her vibration. And I told her, like I didn't know if she was seeing the same, but I told her I can see your colors. I can see this and this. I think it was purple, yellow, if I'm not wrong. And when she told me, she said, "Yeah, I can see yours too. Yours is red." Very sacral, right? Like, so, oh, good. It's good to hear that. So that was a very nice shared experience, you know?
Mm, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Part of what I hear in your story is so much disconnection as a child, feeling disconnected from the religion, not feeling like you belong in the country or in the church. And what I hear in your first experience and how you work with psychedelics is it's so communal and with others, and how important support and connection is in your psychedelic experiencing, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I think like that's the way that I want to keep exploring that. Like right now, I'm doing the PhD in psychology. I'm in the second year here at the University of Ottawa. And that's pretty much my thesis, right? Like I want to work about like immigration process and how we are like re-engaging and reconnecting with the land, how we are like able to develop, like to find a sense of belonging in these community-based spaces that that connect with sacred plants, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. But I'm totally about like the communal sense that emerges from these connections with the
Mm.
plants. Yeah,
You know, we'll often talk about a calling in a spiritual or in a creative sense. Do you feel like psychedelics called you in some way?
absolutely. Like only like if you're already curious about something, you know, I think that's already a calling.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I have been curious since like I was back in Brazil, but as I mentioned, there was other like subjectivities, like concerns that I was not feeling safe, so that I never like went for this encounter.
Mhm.
But now I'm in a completely different space in my life. I feel ready to go there. It's not only a different space in my life, but even like going back to Brazil, my connections there have changed, you know. So
Mm.
now I have like I work with indigenous community in Brazil too. That before when I left, I've never worked with indigenous groups in Brazil. So it's my return, like it's from a different perspective, a different experience, a different person. Here in Canada, also like I go by River. River is a name that is more like close to my gender identity now. It's more close to how I perceive myself in just like connectedness with nature too. It's also my last name in Brazil. It's my last name in Brazil, so it's just a
Dear.
matter of like translating it. But yeah, it made a lot of sense.
I love how resourced you sound in terms of reclaiming what felt disconnected in your roots, in your childhood, in your Brazilian heritage and experiences, and how your path with psychedelics has helped you reconnect with yourself and reconnect with who you were as well as who you are.
I also feel that the river is a way to like to claim it, right? Because
Yeah.
as I mentioned, I'm also from Rio de Janeiro, right?
Mhm.
And the spirituality that I also like running the rivers, who live in the rivers. So yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
I really appreciate knowing this path you're on, this river that you're on, and that you have so much support and feel so resourced as you're being carried on it and navigating through it. It's been so lovely to hear your story and to explore a little bit together. Are there any final words or any advice that you would have for someone who is considering a similar path or is curious about psychedelics?
Yeah, I think my advice is love is gonna overcome fear. So if you're feeling the calling, right? People know when they are feeling the calling because they are interested about it, they're curious about it, as we mentioned before. And yeah, I don't think you should rush because it's important to feel safe. It's important to know who you are with when you're opening to this encounter. So don't rush the experience, but give space to this to happen. Do your movements for this to happen. I've always been interested in things that I heard about ayahuasca. I never thought that I would like move to Canada first of all because it was never like something that I wanted to do. And then here I would like had this encounter with mushrooms. So this was never a plan, but I was open to this encounter with these plants. I just need like to put the puzzle like pieces together. A few things that I needed before to pave the ground before to feel confident enough. So if you need to do it, yeah, do it. There are a lot of people who are reliable. Yeah, just be open to the right time for it.
I love that. And I love the advice of seeking support and safety
Mm-hmm.
and knowing yourself and when is
Yeah.
right for you. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Lucia, for sharing your story.
Thank you, Amy, for your invite. It was nice sharing this. Yeah, I hope it's going to make sense for some people and it's going to encourage people to have this encounter,
Mm.
honestly.
Thank you so much.